I find myself taking my art supplies pretty much wherever I go. In fact, I've taken to keeping my backpack with me whenever I leave the house for anything that is out of the ordinary in the slightest. As such, I make sure I always have at least a baseline level of drawing supplies on me at all times, and it has served me well. How often do you end up with a few minutes to spare and you just fall into doom scrolling on your phone? That could have been a few minutes of drawing. So I'm going to go over a few of my traveling setups and hopefully give you some prompts so you can assemble your own. The first caveat of many, I am sure, is that I often take way more than I need, so I will try to pare it down here a little bit, but, well, we'll see. The always setup. This one is a bonus, and simply came out as I was scripting this video. The absolute basics are simple. Make sure you have a mechanical pencil or a ballpoint pen with you at all times. Stash a few in your car, in your backpack, your purse, your partner's purse, whatever. They will save you when you end up with just a few minutes. Alright, let's get to the first proper setup. This first setup I call coffee shops and unanticipated journeys. This is my basic drawing setup. It includes this little container, which only costs a few dollars, and any random sketchbook. At this moment, I have my ink studies one. This is where I practice a lot of the stuff that I work on for my ink technique videos. The container is nice, but a simple Ziploc bag would do in a pinch. I actually have this right off to the side here, where I keep some of my Posca markers in here. The benefit of this is that each thing has its place, so it's easy for me to see where everything is. So these are my basic supplies. I use these a lot in my drawing. They are Pigma microns. This is a 005. And then I've got my 01s, which I use for almost everything. I actually have 3 or 4 of those in here at all times. Next, we come over here and we have slightly larger sizes. I have a 02 and a 05, which is the big broad-tipped one. Following that, I have brush pens. I have the Pigma Micron one that goes along with them. I actually have a bunch of these now. I buy them in packs of 5 or 10. This is my standard go-to. This thing's amazing. This one right here, I believe, is a Faber-Castell, and it is just a little bit thicker, so it doesn't come to quite the nice tip the other one does, but it's better for filling in large areas. And then, of course, I keep 2 pencils. I keep a mechanical pencil, as I love them for their consistency, but I also keep this red pencil, which is a Prismacolor Cola Race. These are lovely. Somebody in the Discord server recommended them. I love it, and you've probably seen it a bit. The last thing here in this very basic setup is my eraser. Now, this is a Prismacolor eraser. It doesn't have to be anything special like this one. It's just important that you have an eraser if you're going to be working with some pencil. In addition, the sketchbook doesn't matter very much. It's just having one thing, a dedicated sketchbook that's going to allow you to put down marks whenever you want to. It doesn't really matter what kind of sketchbook you take with you, but a low stress one is optimal, one that you can draw anything into. If you have a specific sketchbook, one designed for one medium, for one kind of drawing, well, I would exclude that one here. In fact, I have this sketchbook, for example, that is my world building sketchbook. This one would not be a sketchbook that I would take along if I was only taking a single sketchbook. This setup really is the ideal one for you're just going to have a little bit of time, maybe half an hour, maybe an hour, maybe you're just not sure if you'll have any time at all. You're going to the doctor's office or something. This is my standard setup. It's just a couple pens, a pencil, an eraser, and any random sketchbook. And this is the one that I basically don't leave home without. This next setup I call a weekend away. And it's going to start with exactly the same things that we used in the last one, but obviously is going to build on that. This next setup is what I take when I'm crashing at someone's house or somewhere in the mountains for a few days. This is where I immediately start taking more supplies than I actually need, but that's simply bound to happen when you're excited about drawing. So as you might expect, it includes the same things from the first set, but it's also going to include some additional drawing surfaces. Generally, I'll bring a more specific sketchbook. This one, for example, is a different type of paper. It's my Bristol sketchbook, and it's the one that I use for pretty much only ink drawing. I used it for a lot of Smogist and Inktober work, but I'm going to take a more specific sketchbook generally at this point in time. I like having 2 different kinds of paper. This one is for ink as well, so I would actually, in this situation, probably take something more like this, which is a pencil-specific sketchbook. It doesn't really matter. I just like if I have got a little bit more time to take a couple different things. So I've got several different options that I can bring with me. This is generally because if I'm worried about getting bored, I want to make sure I've got some alternatives. In addition to that, I'm going to bring another medium, and generally for me, that's my brush pens. So I have this second carrier that I mostly just take a ton of brush pens and shove in, so I have assorted colors, especially if I know exactly what I'm going to be working on. This set is one that I use when I'm working my world building sketchbook, so it's got a lot of greens and earthen tones for doing buildings and things like that. This might also be the time where I take an art book or two. I've got some new ones here that I haven't put a ton of time into yet, so they will be lovely for any kind of weekend away. If I'm being honest, I generally don't get into them though. I generally just stay with my basic mediums, but I like having these as an alternative. And like I mentioned earlier, I often pack way too much, but if I'm going to be away for 2 or 3 days, it's not a bad idea to have a couple things like this. The last thing I want to say here is, at this point, I will almost always bring my computer and my tablet as well for references, for looking things up, anything that's going to give me just a little bit more advantages with my artwork. I'm generally not going to worry about recording, especially audio, when I'm away for just a couple days. But this would be kind of the setup for getting away for just a couple days. This third setup I call free time and little responsibility. Okay, so this is more of my setup when I get out of town, either flying across the country to visit family or traveling abroad where I'm going to have some downtime and the ability to put a good amount of time into art. If you are a brave and fortunate soul who takes trips specifically for art, this might be a wonderful place to start building your repertoire. So as you might expect for this tier, for me at least, it would include all the previous mentioned things, but I'm going to double down on a lot of them. For a trip like this, I'm often going to take specific category sketchbooks. So this one is experiment and documentation, for example. This one is any inks, alcohol, or brush pen. This one's for studies only. And the one below is just for anything. I have to have a sketchbook where I'm allowed to do anything. And of course, allowed to do is just me talking about my own kind of quirks when it comes to artwork. Now, generally, if I'm going away for a week, I'm probably going to take 3 sketchbooks, maybe 4, but I'm also going to get into some sketchbooks that are going to be more specific to a particular medium, because I like taking paints with me when I travel. Often it's just this simple set of watercolors that I have right here. I've had them for forever. They're wonderful. They're highly compact. They honestly fit into the cup holder in a lot of my backpacks. I might take a sketchbook like this, which is specifically just for watercolor birds. Very small, compact. This one, which I use for gouache. I like the specific sketchbooks, especially painting when I travel. I don't always get a lot of opportunity to do that, but it's a lovely thing. This is a lovely set of watercolors. I haven't put enough time into them yet, but they are wonderful. It's a Russian brand. And then these would be my gouache paints. And I have taken these before. In fact, you can see this is my travel setup for them. So I've got even a little pair of pliers to help open them because they kind of get sealed. But I've taken these on planes with me multiple times. In fact, usually about 50% of the stuff that I travel with when I am traveling is art supplies. And to be fair, I probably only use about half of them. I will generally take a few more art books as well, though again, I often put in just a few minutes into them, but generally I have the space, so it's not such a big deal. I do have a tendency to get a new art book before I go on a trip. It's always amazing to be able to, look at some new things on the plane and study some stuff while you're traveling. That's always a good thing. Another is I generally will bring bigger sketchbooks. So maybe something like this, which I just recently picked up, which is a 14 by 11 sketchbook. Sometimes I'll go up to 11 by 17, but that's pretty big. It's going to take the entire bottom of my suitcase. But it's nice sometimes just to have bigger things to work with. Generally at this point as well, I will take some stuff to film. If I'm away for more than 5 days, I'll generally work on filming some material for my YouTube channel. I don't always get into it, but it's nice to be able to have that option. I did purchase rather recently something that is going to just allow me to set my camera on the side while I'm working, but I haven't gotten into it yet.
Those are the 3 tiers of setups that I take for traveling with art supplies. Like I mentioned earlier, I seldom travel without some art making supply, and I find that working on creative endeavors simply makes me a better person to be around, which is all the more beneficial while traveling. These setups aren't precise, but I don't think any of us would benefit from a perfectly scripted list.
We all work a little bit differently, but I hope that seeing the stuff that I take when I run out of the house for a morning or go visit family for a week will be helpful for your planning. The last thing here is, I would like to encourage you to get out and do some art. If that's as simple as taking a sketchbook to the park, do it. But if you find yourself traveling during the spring or summer, going to visit family for holiday, don't leave the art supplies behind. Take them with you, sneak a sketch here and there, and enjoy your life. Well, as always, thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. Let me know in the comments below what your traveling setup looks like, or if you're one of those unfortunate souls that often forgets your art supplies until you finally arrive wherever you're going. Maybe you have some funny anecdotes about situations where you've run to the store or you've stolen a pen from your grandma so that you have something to work with. Have a good one, y'all. See you soon.